Welcome to Rusty Studio. Have you ever played Batman Arkham VR? I was blown away by the game. It was my first VR game that I've ever played on my Oculus Quest 1 using Steam VR, and because of it, I was inspired to learn more about VR development using Unity XR Interactive Toolkit. In this video, I will be breaking down three key interactions from Batman Arkham VR that I found particularly intriguing and demonstrating how recreating them using Unity. So when you first load the game, you're presented with a menu that allows you to select your preferred play mode, either seated or standing. And to make your selection, you simply move your head and press the A button on your controller. Now, this head-based selection mechanic is used throughout the game for teleportation locomotion. And instead of walking or running throughout the game environment, you can teleport to different locations or spots in the area when aiming your head, and when you see the location that you want to go, just press the A button. So this is how I recreate something similar in Unity. So before tackling the teletransportation and human interaction, first I needed to understand how the XR Interactive Toolkit manages your input. So if you manage to add everything correctly when you set up your VR environment, you're gonna have your XR player, and inside your XR player, you're gonna have your camera offset, and inside this camera offset, you have your main camera with your headset, your left and right hand controller. Now, even though it looks very different, since this project I need to tackle something different, there is a script that is basically the default one for the controllers, which is the XR controller action base. This script from the package is the one responsible in a sense to map a specific input from your controller to a specific event. For example, in the XR Interactive Toolkit, your select action event is your primary event for mostly everything. So for a default setting, in order to grab an item or to teleport yourself, you call for the select action. The select action, it is mapped for your grip button. So if I double click here for the in the reference, it's going to take me to the left hand interaction select. Now my hand interaction or my XR right hand interaction, we have the action map for the select and select value. Now, for both events, this map for the grip button. Once I understood that, in order to make it similar to the Batman Arkham game, I did the following. So inside my main camera, there is a child object called teletransportation ray. Now, just a quick note here, both of these scripts are actually part of the XR Interactive Toolkit package. For my X-Ray Interactor, it's actually an invisible raycast that is shooting from the center of my headset. So this ray interactor is going to be interacted with only two layers, which will be the UI layer and the teletransportation layer. I increased the raycast distance to 60, and then I added the XR controller action base. Now it looks similar, but in a way I removed the entire input map that it was there, and I only concentrated on the select action event and the UI press action event. And then once I tackle it, I created a new input in my action next to my action map for my XR right hand interaction. I created a new input called select teleport. The select teleport will only be called once you press your A button from your right hand controller. Now here it doesn't say the A button. Um, Once you wanted to input your button for either left or hand controller, these are identified as primary button and secondary button. Your primary button will always be the lower button from down up. So if you have your right hand controller, your primary button is your A button. By doing this, the raycast is responsible only for two layers, and it's gonna be interacted or being called for once I press the A button. Once I tackle the input scenario, I needed spots in order to jump from one point to another. So I created this little red big squares that you see here on the scene. So each spot or each teleport spot have what is called the teleportation anchor. Uh, the raycast, once they see the spot, because each of these squares have the interaction layer mask teletransportation. So every time I see the right cast in that spot, it's gonna be called for. Now you may be wondering, how do I identify if I'm seeing these spots? Similar as the game from Batman Arkham VR, when you see a spot, your letter A with the symbol of the bat will, like in a way, blink, like telling you you're seeing this spot. Once you press the A button, you're gonna be able to go to this spot. Side of each object, my red square object, is a child object called sickle selection. Now the sickle selection is actually a particle that once it's turned on, let me play here, it's gonna show this particle effect. So I needed to, every time I see that spot, I needed to play this particle effect. In the teleportation anchor, here there's a hover action, hover enter, and hover exit actions. Um, these events are being called only if a raycast is on top of these spots or on top of anything related to the teletransportation layer. So in this case, every time I see these spots, I'm gonna turn on the game object. And every time I exit it or in a way stop looking at the spot, the game object circle selection will be turned off. Now for the UI, I did something similar, but in this case, I needed to create a custom script to make some similar effects from the game. On the game, when you see something related to the menu, either the image or the text seems to be in a way increased in size and decrease in size when you're not looking at it. So you look at the UI or the text will increase in size, and when you stop looking at it, the image and text will be back to the default size. So for that, I added what is called the UI XR UI canvas, and inside of this canvas, I attached a custom script more that I created called the XR UI Manager. More later, that on details later on. So I have two images. Both of these images have an event trigger component and a button component. Now, the event trigger, which is something that you can attach to it, I have two events, the pointer enter and pointer exit. These two events will be called once the raycasts are on top of these images, and they will be calling a method, a public method that is inside the XRUI manager script called scene select. Every time I see the image, the scene select method will be called. Once I stop seeing the image or the raycast is outside of these events, the announcing select method will be called. And on the button, something similar. I have a onClick event here on the button component that is gonna call the select event method inside the XR UI manager script. So if I double click to show you the script, so inside this script is very self-explanatory but very easy to understand. Every time I seeing these images, I'm gonna call the scene select method, and then I'm going to increase, in a sense, my game object in size. Once I'm not seeing the images, I'm calling the non-scene select method, and I'm decreasing the game object back to its default values. And every time I see these images and press my A button, I'm gonna call for this little event called select event. What I'm doing that is that I'm changing the color for the text every time I'm seeing the images and pressing the A button. This is how I tackle the teleport and the UI interaction as the Batman Arkham VR game. Thank you for hearing me out. Until the next one, have a lovely day.